welcome to Strictly Speaking. My name is Joshua Reaves, and I am the program director here at University Theater. And tonight we're welcoming to the show a special guest right here. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is PORNCHANOK KANCHANABANCA. You can call me Nok for short. Hi.
Hi, Nok. And Nok is a sound designer and a composer, and she's going to be talking to us tonight about her work and what she's been up to these past couple of months. So, Nok, welcome to the show, and let's start off real easy question.
Okay.
Your own words, what does it mean to be a sound designer?
Wow, actually a big question. What does it mean to be a sound designer? For me, being a sound designer means a person who taking care of all the sound that the audience hear. I'm talking in the context of theater performance. Yeah, so all the sound that you hear and maybe also some music that have been picked in the show. And make sure that all those telling the story that we all try to tell.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and how long have you been doing this? How long have you been in sound design?
Oh, wow. Okay. More than 10 years. So I started sound designing, call myself a sound designer around like 4 years after undergrad. So now, yeah, I would say like more than 10, 12 years. Yes.
Now, you are not only a sound designer, you're also a composer. So you write a lot of your own music.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what brought you into this world first? Were you music first, or were you sound design and fell into music? How did that all work out?
It actually started with playing music and being a musician in the show. And that was back when I was still in Thailand. So I love playing music since I was a kid. So I started playing music when I was 6 years old with like Thai classical instrument. And I keep learning other instrument. Like I play all of it in the Thai classical instrument. My teacher was like, why you keep like changing your instrument? Not really good at something. And then my teacher teach me how to play guitar, and I play a piano and I play accordion. I just so curious about like instrument, and I just excited about learning it. And I thought I was gonna be a musician. So I was trying to get into a music school, but by that time I was not learning about any Western music yet. I was still like in my Thai classical music thing. And I was like, oh, if I'm gonna go to college, I wanna do a bigger, like a wider variety of music. So I should start Western music and then go for that in my college degree. So in 2 years, I practiced music and audition. And guess what? I didn't get in because other people start at 5 and I just start at around 16 or so. So I was like, okay, so what will it be that still have music in it? So I thought about, okay, what about performing arts? So that kind of brought me to performing arts area, but I actually not really know what it is yet. And then until like almost last year of college, we have to be like apprentice in a theater group in Bangkok in Thailand. So I choose one, and then people there know that I like to play instrument, and they was like, "Oh no, do you want to be part of this show that I have? You want to play a piano?" And I was like, "Oh sure." So then from that, I was like, "Oh, this is so fun playing music for it." And then they start like, "Hey, can you find a sound effect? You like a doorbell?" I was like, "Sure, I can find a doorbell," and then play it from my iTunes, ding ding, and then from that doorbell to a dog bark to other things, and then people say, "Oh, what about writing music for it?" I was like, "Oh, I'll try," and then I just hooked, and then later I just realized, "Oh, this is what I do now."
Well, I got to say, I've gone through, I've been spending a lot of time this last weekend going through a lot of your work, and it doesn't feel like you just became a sound designer. It's some really great stuff. Like,
oh, thank you.
So, okay. So you said you started off by playing an instrument in a show. So
yes.
Was it in fact college that really set you off on that path to sound design, or what was that first show that you did outside of college that really?
The first show actually is called The Lighthouse, and it's a puppetry, it's a shadow puppet. And I basically play a little Yamaha keyboard while people are puppeting. And it was awesome. It was so much fun. So I was playing something like uh, Mozart piece. Like I just like pick bits and part of the music that I know and I just play along with it. And that is the first show. And then with that first show, somehow other people saw me playing. I was like, oh, do you want to play in my project? And then from one another, it's kind of like take me to other things. And then I become the musician of the theater world and in that part. And then I met a pantomime theater group in Bangkok named Baby Marm, and I a fan of their work, and I was like, oh, I would love to work with you, and they was like, yeah, why don't you like come improvise in like our show? And then from that on, somehow I become their sound designer, and start to like find music and sound effect for them, and then I'll start like, oh, I really enjoy this, but I don't have no idea what it is. So basically search Google and it pop up. It's called sound design. And I'm like, okay, this is what I am, I guess.
Tag, and that's how it went.
Yeah. In Thailand, in that time, no one know what that means, like sound design. Yeah.
So we have our first question from Aaron. Aaron asks, in
Mhm.
what ways have your beginnings as a musician composer impacted your work as a sound designer?
Um, I guess like I have the ability to create my own like vocabulary. Like I sometimes I really don't have to like find the right piece. Sometimes I just can like, oh, what about this? And I can put my original thought on things. But also like having a reference of music also help. Sometimes like the director will come in and say, oh, what about this piece, but not exactly like this. So I can like tweak in my own way and deliver to like for the specific story that we want to tell. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Aaron, and everyone else. Make sure you keep those questions coming throughout the night. So take us through what is it like to work with the director, as a composer yourself, and
Mhm, mhm.
ability to have that conversation um, with them during the process, whether it be rehearsal or pre-rehearsal.
Mhm.
Take us through the process. How do you work from the time you get the script to the time you open a show?
Yeah. So when I get the script, yes, a lot of notes for sure. I like taking notes. I was like, okay, there's this sound. And then I will mark like the question or the moment of the play that I think like, oh, this is an important moment of the play. I think this is a heavy sound moment, but I don't know what it is. And I keep that question to my mind until we have the first meeting with everyone. They call like the first design meeting. And then you hear the uh idea and the inspiration of the director about like their hopes and dream, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's what they mean. And then that kind of guide me to know what that world that the director tried to create is like. And then it started me thinking about, okay, so what the palette that what that mean with that word that they describe the play. And from that I will start to do my own sketch. I call it a shitty first draft. So I basically will have a logic programming and say, name of the show slash dash shitty first draft. So I don't feel attached to it and I will do whatever I want to. Basically, like, okay, if this show will compress to tell the story with just sound in like a minute and a half, what would that be? What is like the arc of it? So basically I just collect a palette that I think like, oh, this is a show that I think it is. And then I show that to the director and let the director hear that and then respond to me like, is this a right show? And if it's not, then I was like, okay, then we'll
No, that's
grab it out and do it again. And yeah, I feel like um, I cannot explain the sound like as good as the sound itself. So sometimes I just have to create it and show it to the person. And then that told me that if it doesn't write, at least I know that that didn't write.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. It's like a little trailer, a little snippet, a little appetizer of the show. That's great.
Yeah, and actually that actually helped during the process too. Like when we would go on and on, and sometimes I got blocked, and I was like, what is this again? And I go back and listen to what I make the script. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm lost track, and the palette is here. You can like keep using that later on. So it's something for remind myself too.
Awesome. Well, as a designer myself, and some of my fellow designers, we kid about. We have that first initial thought, that first initial belief of what the show's about. And then we go through these meetings and we're all over the place. How often do you come back after you've kind of meandered to that original piece? And or how many times does that original piece make it into the show?
Uh, well, actually, that original piece, it's just like, it's not really a cue. It's more like, yeah. But the like the main melody of it is still there. So sometimes I was like, oh, okay, maybe I didn't use that sound yet. Is in that sketch. But yes, and then I just took that. Mhm.
Awesome. Well, we have an anonymous asking, what was your favorite show you have done sound design for?
Oh, there's so many favorite. Okay, we'll talk about it in like there. I want to talk about two shows. There's one favorite in terms of the fulfillment of the experience of it, but not the technical part of it. Is when I was working with Baby Mom, the Pantomime group, and I just pick sound effect and music and play with them. Uh, and also a sound operator for the show. So every time I play Go, I will hear the laugh coming because of the pantomime. Their action was so great. They're such a good performer, and then somehow the sound also like elevate them up that moment. And somehow I feel like I have a power every time I hit go, and then the laugh come up and everyone just smiling. So that's just the joy of being a sound designer for me. But if we talk about like the process that is very challenging and fun and feel like very creatively, I will say the show at Steppenwolf that called The Great Leap. And for that show, what is exciting about it is the combination of the light, the projection, and the sound that is so like intricate together. And it's like fun. Like it's almost like when I when I have like a in the transition did a sound of like a car beeping. Suddenly the projection designer will put a car on it and right on the stage, and I was like, oh, that was so cool. And also the lighting designer will like respond to that. So somehow like that show just make all the design elements just so intricate together, so my sound just sound much better. And also like the fun of like linking things together with MIDI and the choreograph of the actors. And yeah, so that was a great show.
So right here, I've pulled up The Great Leap. In the sketch you have here, this is the sketch you work with.
Yes.
This. Do you mind?
Yes. So yeah, you can play it. So this is the shitty first drafts.
Let's see if we got it to work. So that's what you take to the director. And I stopped it early, so that wasn't your stop. But it sounded like you had a lot of basketball dribbles and net. Did you pull those, or did you record it? Do you ever record your own effects?
Sometimes it depends. For this one, it's all pulling sound effects. I think the sound effect that I recorded was something that very specific, and I cannot find the sound that I liked, and I will start to record it. But for this piece, I think the main thing about it is the writing, the music part of it. there's a scene at the end of the show that called the game that we like underscore the whole scene with the music, and it was so fun to like figure out how could we create a basketball game in with just one person who play basketball and running back and forth, and use the music to like lifting the moment up. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you all want to find more information on that particular show, I went ahead and put the link in your chat box. So our next question comes from Griffin James. Griffin asks, what was something you wish you knew about sound design when you first started?
When wish I would know. When I first started. Interesting question. I feel like I'll slowly learn about things when I start sound design. I guess when I first started, I wish I know QLab. I was using a iTunes to playing my sound cue or a CD. Yes, and I have like it's called a quiet track. So the music from the first one doesn't like go through the other one. So I have a quiet track between tracks to make sure that. So I mean, I don't say that it's like a bad thing. It's like I wish I know QLab in that time because it make me able to like uh not go through the like small I would say like a problem solve about like how could I play two things at the same time. But right now QLab is just so powerful that you kind of create music in the program now. Sometimes I don't even have to use Logic to write music. I can just use QLab. And yeah, so the knowing the tool is definitely help you improve your skill for sure.
Yeah, and for those of you who are wondering, what is QLab? It's a great program that started off as sound playback system, but now has incorporated lighting and projection to some degree. But yeah, it's a great program. We use it here at State as well, and love it. All right, thanks, Griffin, for that question. So, what are you up to? What are you up to now? Now that we're with COVID-19 going on, how
Mhm.
has that affected your work, both how you work and artistically? Has the world around you changed your outlook on your art?
Yeah, the world that definitely changed a lot. Before COVID pandemic start, I was traveling a lot. So most of my work is with regional theater. Even though right now I'm based in Chicago, I was not in Chicago at all, and like travel from show to show. And once the pandemic like hit, uh, I was just home like from now on and didn't travel again. And now there's the show that things that have keep going for work are more show that is a video based kind of thing, so it's not a live performance anymore. So also there a project that is like kind of a video, and it's more like me writing a music and score on top of the videos. There's two show going on, one with Hartford State, which is called the Community Carol, which is um, a Christmas Carol workshop piece that will do a streaming. So I will put the music and the sound effect for the show. So we will do a recording, and then I will do the post production of the music. Yeah. And another thing is a show with Stephen Wolf. This is also an online streaming show with a show called Dashes. And so I'm a sound designer for this show, and this is more like a post production thing as well. So it's no more hit go with the iTunes anymore.
Awesome. Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. And let's see here. So through your time in the last 10 or so years, and we talked about QLab has changed
Mhm.
the way you approach things, but has there been other, is the technology changed at all for you in the last 10 years that allows you to better present your work either as a sound designer or as a composer?
Yes, there's a lot of powerful program that definitely help writing music much easier. When you like call yourself a composer, sometimes people would think like, oh, do you have like a paper and you write like a note sheet music on it? It's not like that anymore. So I have used multiple program in order to like write music. Also depend on what kind of music that I write for. Do I writing for a musician to play, or is it is it electronic music, then I don't really worry about the notation. It's more about like creating the piece. So is there Logic for sure for editing software. There's a Live for electronic music and looping stuff, and Sibelius for writing a score. And there's a lot of library and sample of like good sounding for you, that sometimes if you don't have the budget to have a live musician to play your piece, now all those sound library is very powerful and sound believable. I would say.
All that right there. What is always open on your desktop? Like, what's the one thing that's you're always using?
One thing's always using QLab, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, so David Jones asks, in general, how relevant is knowledge of technical elements of theater sound systems to your design work?
It's very important, actually, because at the end of it, we are present our sound or the music in the space with live audience. So how do you hear that sound is very important, even though, because I write my own music, so I can imagine how the instrument sound in the space. So I can export my music as a stem and put it in different place as a system that I design, which is all like, sometimes you can put your string in the surround and put the brass in the back of the stage to make a different kind of sound, like whatever you imagine. But if you don't have that luxury of like write your own music and you have a piece, so you only have the limited of the stereo system. Yeah, and also to know about the system, somehow it will help like have the dimension of the piece, like about like how the audience feel more about the hearing. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. That's great. Thank you, DJ, for that question. And Ron asks, have you given any thought? Oh, this is a good one. Have you given any thought to COVID-19 and what the sound of COVID is?
Okay. So
be for you.
I was thinking about something that the spreading, right? The action of spread out and how that create like a bigger. Sometimes I think about sound like a pictures, right? So from one that spread out and then keep like contact to other and like get bigger and bigger, like when it's spread. So even though I explained that, it's just I have to make it in order to actually explain it. But yes, that's the idea, I think.
Okay, so let's keep going down that track.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. So, okay, you got this picture in your head spreading out. What would be the next step for you to start to achieve this sound? What would you do?
So basically I will go to my like sound library and start to listen to things like, oh, what is that sound that it feel like it? Then I will basically, well, if I open Logic up, I go to the sound library, the instrument library, and it's like, oh, this one I like it. Just leave it. And I will just have the stack of things, and then I'll start to like play around with each sound and then combine it together. Yeah.
Okay. That's a great question. Thank you so much. All right. So, okay, we've been talking about sound and music and things that make noise, but there was a project you worked on called, where is it? Practicing Silence. I'd like to take just a minute to show our audience the first minute of that and then talk a bit about that process.
Silence is part of my work. It's part of the rhythm, it's part of the melody. Music will not happen without silence.
Every step of this ballet came out of silence. Every step was choreographed before I had heard a note of the music. It was more of a Cage Cunningham approach where the music and the choreography were developed in different contexts and then they were brought together, as opposed to the music preceding and then the choreography being this visualization of the music.
So, Silas, the choreographer there, director, said that choreography is the visualization of music. And I'm interested to hear how this process worked. It sounded like the music was created after the choreography. How did that process? How did you approach this collaborative piece of work?
Okay, I have to talk a little bit about the projects first. So it's called the Practicing Silent. So it's the project that's happened at Grace Farm Art Initiative Creative Place, and they have they pick the artists to come to work together in order to talk about a certain topic, and with this topic is practice silent. So what is silent do? What does silent mean? And what powerful silent is? And in this the group of artists is one artist is with us is called his name is Ilya Kaminsky, and he's a poet, and he actually deaf, and he write a poet called The Deaf Republic. So that is, for me, is like a script that everyone have it together from the beginning. So everyone read the poet and try to create this piece together. So for Cyrus, when he read this, so me and Cyrus, like, we create a scene from this poetry, and we talk about, like, okay, there's a couple scene that we wanna play, and in that time, so I was in New York City. I'm not sure where I am at that time, but we are in a different place. And he was working with his New York City ballet dancer, create a piece. And for me, I also create the music on myself. Why we didn't share anything to each other. And then Silas will show me, nope, this is what I'm working on for this moment of the piece. And he will show me. And then somehow I was like, okay, this is the music that I have. And I kind of lay on top, kind of similar to scoring the theme, that I layering on top from what he made. And then I share it back to him, like, hey, this is the music that inspired from what you made. So I got the inspiration from two places. One is from the poetry and one is from the choreography. And then we start to go back and forth together. And then before we perform, we have a couple days workshop together that bring everything together. And yeah, so we tweak a little bit, and that's become the piece. Yeah.
Did you find that the dancers, did your music change the way they approached the work, or could you tell once they finally heard the piece?
Definitely, yeah. So like, uh, the music is set the tempo somehow. So they kind of have the place that they mark, other than just like use their feeling and movement throughout. Yeah. And I think another thing that I like about this piece, like the idea is, um, I the poet, he record himself reading the poet. And there's one idea. I was like, oh, what about if we use his voice and it become a music, even though he cannot hear his voice himself. So there's one piece that's called Lullaby, that I basically notation from the poet reading, and from that it become the music piece. Yeah.
And no, that was the piece that you had sent. Yes.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I'm gonna play a little bit of that real fast. And let's see here. And tell me if this is the correct one. So. Yeah.
Yes.
Little daughter, rainwater, snow and branches protect you. Fight wash it falls, and neighbor handsome, child of my April's little Lord of 6 pounds. My white hair tips your sleep lid.
Awesome. Cool. I'm gonna pause this right there right before we hit the next tempo. But yeah, that's so and that right there was taken directly from his tempo and from the feeling inside that.
Yeah,
That's cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, so let's see here. What other questions do we have? So do you find yourself using a certain type of sound or compositions, or is there an instrument that you prefer to set, to set your pieces on?
Mhm. I definitely have a sound that I use often and the sound that I attract to. But when I start to write things, I use a piano as a starting point because it's an instrument that I'm very fluent about. So I can just start sketching things through the piano and record it. But then eventually we'll uh, pick the instrumental and depend on what the show is. And I always like the sound of the string instrument and the sound of the glass sound of vibraphone. Is it something that is feel uplifting? But it doesn't mean that I always use that for every show. But I found myself using that often. Yeah, there's definitely other show that that sound is not part of it in the vocabulary. Yeah.
Okay. And then another question: do you feel that because you said you study in Western music, do you find yourself harking back to any of of Thai music and of that style of music?
Well, I have to say that I really didn't have a chance to do that as much, just because that most of the time we talk about specific story, and now I'm in the U.S. The story also mostly about the U.S. Um, so that sounding of the Southeast Asia not really part of the story. I mean, I wish that could I could use that more, but yeah, didn't able to have that opportunity yet.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Has there ever been? Here's a question that we always get, and everyone usually asks this. Everyone out there, Campbell, David, Emily, Aaron, go ahead, keep throwing those questions out. But here's one that some people have asked in the past. Have you ever had a major disagreement or a challenge or a design choice that a director disagreed with? And how did you work that out?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are definitely a project that is like not really pleasant or have all the agreement. I think one things that the director who like I have a trouble working with is the person who don't understand uh, how the sound work or how the music work. So there's one time that we have I'm making a transition and that was just like more melodic and musically, and the director want to end whenever it's supposed to end. And for me, I was like, but if you do that and you also want the music to complete, that may be possible, not possible. But for him, he was like, no, you just like cut it. And then somehow in that part, it just hurt my heart. And but for that show, somehow it teach me to learn how to let go and also prepare that that could happen, and how could I make the sound cue that very flexible in order to do that. And yeah, so
What was the most difficult sound cue you've ever had to make?
oh, the most difficult sound cue, I think the difficult sound cue mostly is the realistic sound, like to make for example will be to hear a person yell from the first floor, and the set is in the second floor, but even though it we have actually a
Yeah.
one floor set, and that is about like the placement of the speaker and the EQing, and it's just like the small thing that tweak over and over again, and the director will come to me and say that still not doesn't sound like from the first floor. It's not about the music, it's mostly the real sound that's hard.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Aaron's asking, have you ever considered writing music or doing sound design for film? And in what ways would that be different from theater?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about that, but the different that so different between film and theater is when you can be with other people. When you're doing a sound for film, you are mostly by yourself and probably talk with the director the most. But when you do the sound music for theater, you can be in the rehearsal room, you can see the actors, you can talk with the other designer, and in tech you were with everyone and you collaborating with everyone in the same room, and in that is like a little community and you create things together. It's not like you're yourself in the studio and in your headphone. Like, for me, I prefer that. And sometimes you will get an idea from the actors or the other designer, and it's always fun to collaborate.
Yes, I've been personally missing that for the last couple of months. So,
Me too.
well, speaking of, going forward and hopefully things will change, where do you see the future of your industry going?
Oh, it's so hard. I actually don't not know much now. Everyone's kind of try very hard to still create work and make things going by do all this thing online. And maybe in the future, maybe more outdoor theater, and it'll be something that like that's safe for everyone. Yeah, this is all I can think of right now.
Okay. Well, and you brought up outdoor theater. Have you ever done outdoor theater?
Yes, I did. Have do a show at Montana. It's called Montana Shakespeare Festival. So they actually a theater company that travel around the Montana state from June to August to like travel in different city in order to show Shakespeare. It will be two Shakespeare show, and they don't have the sound operator. And I will the process is me design the sound in Montana Bozeman at the Bozeman Montana State University. Um, then once the show finished design, the actors need to like pack every speaker and set them up by themselves, including all the sound system, and play the QLab by themselves. So when we take the show, there's one time that I was like, oh, why this cue no one play it? Because all the actors need to have the responsibility of like playing all the cue by themselves. And the director was like, oh yeah, everyone is on stage. No, there's no one can get that cue. And I was like, no. So it's a little, you have to be creative for that part. And yeah, it's a very fun show. And we have I believe it's six speaker that is like facing out for the audience, because it's all around, and it's a QSC speaker, which is an active speaker, so you don't have to have an amplifier, so it's very easy to set up and plug it in, and a little mixer and a little uh, MacBook Air that travel with the show. Yeah.
And in terms of the music or the sound effect or how you chose the technology, how different is it from indoor theater to outdoor theater? Or is
Yeah, so probably thinking a lot about like how people can hear, because they all have to be sometime will be so far away, is the music is overcome the actors who is projecting and have just a boom mic to collect them. So it's the balance.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's see. Well, there is a ton of your work online, and like I said, I've been spending a lot of time with it. Is there a particular show that we can look at that perhaps would give us a sense of your particular style, that piano and strings that you talked about?
Sure. So there's a piece called Skylight, which is was at McCarter's Theater in 2008. Yes. So that piece has a sound of the string and the piano.
Would you say the opening?
Yeah, you can listen to the opening. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's, yeah, I can definitely hear, definitely pick out that piano and the strings in there. That's very nice.
Thank you.
Then is asking, can you speak on the issue of licensing with your compositions?
So of my composition is basically from each show. So the theater are the one who what's the word? They are the one who license to perform in the space in the certain time. So until the show run and end. So if the show has to be a remote at some place, there will be a different contract that's come in and asked to like repeat the sound. Or if there's also like an example of the show which the same director who work with a different designer but just want my music with the show, so that is will be a different contract, just asks to use the piece of the music. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kevin, for that question. Well, I mean, we've seen a lot of your design work, we've seen a lot of your composition work, but which one do you really like? Which one's your baby? Which one do you like the most? Is there one that you like the most? Music composition or sound design? And why?
I would say that I like creating content for the story. So creating the system definitely part of it, but I would say that creating the content of the show is my favorite. And sometimes just creating the sound effect is sometimes feel like music to me. It's like you arranging the sound in space. The same like when you arrange the tonal of the note in the bar of music. For me, it's similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Griffin asked to kind of this point, how or when do you make the decision to compose your work sound rather than from a library?
Uh-huh. Um, so I guess it's also like something about the license that every time that you use the music piece from someone, you have to ask the rights for it and then the credit for it. So in order to not to act right sometimes, so imagine being in Thailand and then you use a piece something from America and you like hope that you're gonna ask the right for it. It's so hard that then you end up have to write the music for itself. And also for me, it is very fulfilled when you like write something by yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what do you listen to personally, like for yourself? What kind of music do you like to listen to outside of work?
Very wide, actually. Like it could be like Elino Morricone to like Katy Perry. It could be whatever. And yeah, like even a K-pop or a J-pop, it's depend on the mood. Or sometimes like in late night like this, I could listen to a lo-fi music. It's all varies.
Okay. And do you ever find any of that stuff creeping into your design work?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like I remember during school time in my when I was doing my master degree of the sound design, and my teacher Matthew Sutter, who's a composer and teach me composition, when I was sending my piece to, and he will ask me like, no, what kind of water do you drink? Why it sound like Aaron Coldplay? And I was like, so it's a joke of like I'm in America too much and probably listen to more American music, and now I sound like him. And I was like, okay, it's probably true.
All right. Well, we're going to ask one last question. But before I do that, I'm going to throw it back out to the attendees to see if there's any questions they want to ask. But while they're typing away with the Q&A, what piece of advice would you give to a young person looking to become a sound designer for theater?
Follow your curiosity and try new things. Sometimes you don't know how things work. If you just like show up to the place that you think is the right place to go. For example, if you want to work with one theater company, show up to their show and talk to the person who work with them, and just like get that information, and somehow you never know, you may end up working with them. And do your best work, be kind to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, we hear that all the time. Be kind, be kind. It's such a small world. So that's
Yeah.
great. If there's no more nothing from the attendees, I've actually run out of questions to ask you for tonight. I can't believe it. I mean, slammed right through that. Y'all, I've put Nuck's website in the chat. Take a look at it. There is a section for design and a section for composition, and it's a rabbit hole. I spent, like I said, the whole weekend just going through stuff and just listening to it with the headphones on, and just I like that. I'm style going in here. So yeah, check it out. And with that, we're going to call it a night. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And y'all, thank you all for joining us as well. If you like what you've seen tonight, please consider helping University Theater out by becoming a donor today. Have a great night, Knock.
Bye.